you come into the makerspace and you want to use the machine. The first thing you do is you go to the desk and ask for the bag, and when you open the bag, the first thing you should pull out is probably the foot, okay? So, or the pedal. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the top off the machine, and I'm going to go through all the different functions of what all this machine does. So the first thing you're going to want to do is find the plug that is on the end of your pedal, and it fits in right here above the power switch, okay? So just plug that in securely. Sit the pedal on the floor somewhere that you can reach it comfortably with your foot, and then plug the outlet in to the power strip. We've got it plugged in, we've got power, so the next thing is to turn the machine on, and you'll know it's on because the light that is right here will come on. Then get the machine centered in front of your chair and pulled pretty close to the edge of the table. That's going to make it a lot easier for you to see what you're doing and to function. So first we're going to explain what all of these random dials and things are. So the brand of this machine is Janome. Janome is pretty well known for making good machines, and what they're really good at making is what they call student machines, which is what this is. It's a machine that's designed to be easy for beginners, which is why we picked it, okay? So the first thing we're going to look at is at this end, there is a wheel right here. Okay, and as I move this wheel back and forth, you see it makes my needle over here go up and down. So that is what this wheel is for, is to position the needle at the height I need it for different reasons, okay? Now, there's a trick with this, is that if at all possible, you need to roll it towards you to move the needle. Try not to go backwards, away from you. That's not really good for the machine in a lot of cases. So just as a habit, establish the habit of rolling towards you. Okay, so that's step one. Now, before I do the next step, I want to make sure it's in its highest position and is not down here. Okay, so the next thing I'll show you is the knob that is beneath that. And this one, if you notice, you hear something happening. What's happening is it is changing. This little red indicator is showing you as I change from stitch pattern to stitch pattern, okay? And it goes both ways. So the important thing for you guys to know is that if you're changing this, you always want your needle up in the up position to change it, and that stitch number 13 is what you're going to use for 95% of everything you do. The rest of the stitches have their uses, but for beginners, you can do most everything you want to do on 13, okay? So that's your stitch indicated. 13 is straight stitch, okay? Now, coming over here, these are kind of define the properties of your stitch. So this top one is how wide your stitch is. Now, on a straight stitch, you see right here, there's no width, it's just a line. But a lot of these others have some width to them. This is going to determine how wide each of those stitches is going to be. For straight stitch, we don't determine width. All we determine is needle position. So if you want your needle in the center, down here, you put it on 0. If you want your needle all the way to the left, so you can see it move, if you want it all the way to the left, you put it over here, and any other position in between, okay? So we're gonna leave it in the center, because that's kind of normal. And then this bottom one is your stitch length. So this is gonna be little tiny stitch in one place is 0. 1 is gonna be itty bitty 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 stitches. 2, 3, 4, all the way to 4 is gonna be what we call based. So if you ever read something that says based, go ahead and knock the stitch all the way to 4. On average, you want to stitch most things between 2 and 3. So this is just a button. It only pushes, there's no adjustment to it. It only does one thing. It makes the machine go in reverse. So your machine is set for fabric to go this way into it and stitch. If you ever need to go backwards, which you will, you hold this and the machine will start sewing this way. I'll demonstrate it later, okay? All right, now we're gonna move down into this area. This is where it gets people get a lot of intimidated. It looks like a lot of things going on, and there are, but this is your needle. This is actually what delivers your thread down into your fabric. And the needle can be changed by just turning this screw and pulling the needle down, okay, like that. And when you roll it between your fingers, you will feel a flat spot. That flat spot on the top of the needle goes away from you into here. Push it all the way up into position. Tighten this thumb screw to put it back. Okay. All right. This piece right here is called your foot. Okay. And the foot most of the time it's okay to leave this one on for most things. However, if we come up here and flip this machine up, you will see that there are several of these. They all have different functions. For now, we'll start with this one, and as we do some more skills, we'll learn how to use some of the other ones. But in order to change the foot, there's a little black button on the back. Push it, and the foot is just going to drop out, and you can pull it out with your finger. To put it back, get it in place, push that button, and then drop the lever that is inside to the right, and it should pick it right back up. So that lever, because this is the foot, is the foot lifter. So all this thing does is lift that foot up and down for you so that you can get your fabric in there to start, put it back down to go. All right, so down in this area, there's kind of a lot of stuff going on, so I'm gonna break all this down for you. This is, this plate has a lot of etching on it, and that etching is for you, and it gives you some valuable information. So the center of your needle out to each of these lines, it's marked with a distance. Now this front set of lines is in millimeters, so you've got 10 millimeters, 15 millimeters, and 20 millimeters. The ones in the back are 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, and 6/8 of an inch, which is what we as Americans tend to use. However, most American pattern companies set 5/8 of an inch as a standard seam allowance. It's a little harder to see back here. The good news is it's so close to 15 millimeters that you can just use this line whenever it says 5/8 inch seam allowance, okay? Those measurements are also repeated on the cover of the bobbin case, and the bobbin case is where things get a little interesting. So if I take this lid off, you can see, I'll put my hand behind it so you can see the markings a little better. You can see the markings, and this in the center is where that's 10 millimeters away. And then this diagram right here is actually to help you get this bobbin in correctly. So if you take this cover off and you want to remove the bobbin, you make sure that you follow the plan. So the thread is going to come over the left, come down on the left, right? I'm going to drop it in like this, and then there's a notch right here that it's going to go into. And then if you see, it goes back this way, and look, it magically pulls out that other one. So it's set to do exactly what it needs to do. You just need to kind of help it get there. And then you put your cover back by putting the tabs under and just push down, okay? And that's everything you kind of need to know about right here, except for the fact that there is a secret compartment here, and that secret compartment on this machine holds this magic thing that we will get to at some point. This is a buttonhole maker, but it lives down here. And if you ever need to sew something that is very narrow and it's very hard to get around this, you can remove this so that you just have this much machine to deal with. This is really useful when you're doing cuffs on sleeves or the bottom of very narrow pants. It just makes things a little easier, but most of the time we sew with it in place. I'm going to talk about what all of this stuff up in here does. So the first thing I want you to notice is that it has you a little bit of an instruction guide here where it's going to tell you what kind of stitch you're using, and it's going to give you on a lot of them an example of how you might use them. It's going to show you what width, remember our width indicator down here, it's going to tell you how wide your stitch should be, and then it's going to tell you how long your stitch should be. Sometimes it even tells you your needle position, and it's going to show you what number that corresponds with. And then down here it's going to tell you what foot is the best for each one. Now remember, we talked about the feet being this little piece down here, and I said that there were more. So up here is where your feet are stored. Now for most cases it suggests A as your basic straight stitch foot. However, I find that a lot of beginning students like using this one because it's got more clear and they can see more through the clear parts. That is foot B. It's okay, either one of these will work for straight stitching. Okay. Then we have this guy, this is C. We'll do later videos that show you what they all do because a lot of them you will never use. A lot of them are different kinds of hems and things specialized for quilting, other things like that. This one I do want you to see. This is E, and this is your zipper foot. This one you may use pretty frequently because anytime you put a zipper into something, you're going to use this foot. Okay, so that's our feet, and then we've got this little post right here, and if you notice, it kind of scoots over. This post is going to wind our bobbins. Now remember, our bobbin from earlier was this little spool of thread that we put down underneath the needle, and these actually slide onto here, and we'll show you how to wind one of those in a bit. But that's where it fits. That locks it into place. This stops it. Okay. All right. So here we have the thread spool and this thread spool cap. This is where your actual spool of thread goes onto your machine. Then you put the cap on to hold it in place. Alright, so this knob right here controls the tension, and I want everyone to do me a favor and don't touch this. Okay, so if you think that this is causing you problems, get one of the student workers here to come over and check rather than messing with this. Okay, I can't explain what it does. It essentially keeps the tension equal between the thread coming from the bottom and the thread coming from the top, but it's one of the easiest ways to mess things up, so let's just avoid it. These are thread guides that we're going to use when we thread the machine and thread bobbins, so they don't really do anything, they're just there. And then this last thing is for a buttonhole, and we will get to that in a later video, but this is the different steps of the buttonhole. Okay, and that's everything at the top. So I want to show you one last thing, and that is that the side here opens up. If you're ever curious what the insides look like, you can look here. But that also shows you what the thread take-up lever looks like, which we will be using in a minute because we're going to thread the machine. So there you go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is learn how to wind a bobbin. The bobbin, remember, is the little plastic spool of thread that goes in the bottom of the machine and comes from the bottom, but we have to get some thread on there. So remember I told you that there was a spindle over here for this to go on. So it fits right there, but what we're going to do is we're going to leave that there for just a second, and we're going to take our thread. This is what color thread we want on there. We're going to use black for today because it shows up well. And there's a hole. If there's not, poke a hole in the paper. It's in there. Stick your thread there, and then this is your thread cap. You can put that right there, and that keeps your thread in place. So for a bobbin, the next thing you do is you're going to come to this little black spindle, okay, and then come around it, okay, and then if you look, there's a dotted line with the bobbin symbol, so you're going to follow those instructions. So you come around here and then around this one, okay. Once you've done that, you should have a big piece of thread coming off to this side. Go ahead and clip it if you need to get it down to a useful length. Then come over here and take your little plastic bobbin, and if you look close you can see that there's a hole right there. So this is my trick. Take your thread, and this sometimes takes a minute when you're old like me and your eyes don't work, but if you can get your thread to come up through that little hole, it's going to make your bobbin winding neater. Hang on, let's try the other side since I appear to. I got new contacts yesterday, that's my excuse. Alright, look, I got it, yay! Alright, so I'm going to pull that up through there, and then I'm going to sit this on the bobbin spindle and pushing it to make sure it's all the way down, and then I'm going to push that bobbin spindle like that. So here's my trick part. I've got this tail of thread, and I'm just going to wrap it lightly around my finger a few times. Now, I'm not going to put a lot of tension on this. I'm just going to hold it up and out of the way, go down under the machine, put my foot on the pedal, and as I do, it's going to start winding. I'm going to keep holding this. It's going to get a little harder and a little harder, but if you keep going, eventually it'll snap right off very neatly for you, and then you can, okay? So, good news, the machine is smart enough that it knows how to wind your bobbin and when it's full and when to stop. So you just keep your foot on here, and it will let you know when it's time to finish. There it goes, it stopped. So now you pull the spindle back over to the left and pull straight up and clip your thread, and now you have a fully threaded bobbin that you can sit down there for just a minute. Okay, so we finished winding our bobbin and we're still threaded up to do that. But now we want to actually put our thread down through a needle. So you're going to pull it off and go back to your spool. And this time, instead of going in front of your black little bumper thing, you're going to go behind it, just like that. And then you'll see it wants to automatically line up right here. Good. And then it shows you right here, we're going to make a U-turn. So you can put your finger on the thread up at the top to hold it steady, and then come around here and come up. Now, remember when I showed you can open this. So when you open this, you can see exactly what you need to do. You need to hook around that and come straight back down. Close this. And you go down under here, and there is a little bar that it goes behind. And then the last step is going through the needle. Always, when you thread the needle, go from front to back, and don't wear no contacts. Did I get it? I think I did. There we go. All right, so when you do this, just make sure that sometimes your thread will want to loop around the needle. That's not what you want. You want to make sure that it's going straight through front to back and that the thread is just running down the front of the needle, okay? So you've got that. Now you're going to take your bobbin. Remember, I told you your bobbin case tells you what to do, so follow its instructions. Drop your bobbin in, come through this loop, pull back this way, back toward the back of the machine, put the lid back on. And now I'm going to show you some magic. You have threaded your machine correctly, you have threaded your bobbin correctly, you've got your bobbin tail hanging out here. You're going to grab your needle thread. Don't hold on to it too tightly, but hang on to it. Take your right hand over here to that wheel that I told you about way back in the beginning. Hold onto your thread and roll your wheel towards you. The needle will go dip down, go all the way down, and come back to its highest position. When it does, pull up on this and you'll see a loop come up. That loop is your bobbin thread. So now you have both of your threads from top and bottom up where you can see them. Okay, before you sew, go ahead and tuck them under the thread, under the foot, and have them come out the back. And you are now ready to sew.